Dang it.
Well, alright everyone, welcome to Murphy's Law Garage. Today we move on to part 5 of building the diesel Bronco before there was YouTube. And we're not going to waste any time. Once again, we're going to jump right into the action. So what you see here is actually the intake for the Bronco. I built this by hand using some aluminized steel pipe that the local hardware store had laying around. Got a an oiled reusable filter here, washable filter, and this coupler right here is the original one. We ended up replacing it. You can see here from the previous videos about a lot of the wiring that was being done here. The injector driver modules bolted down. We've got the fuse box in, and we just got a few wires randomly laying loose up here. Let's expand that a little bit. Alright. Here you can see the intake has been painted. This this bolt right here, this piece of all thread actually, and I've got a washer welded on it right here, travels to the fender liner, and there's a hole drilled in the fender liner, and it supports this tube. The filter goes on this end, and it's nutted onto the back of the fender liner. Alright, some more wiring appears to be cleaned up in here. You can see we don't quite have vacuum hooked up yet. Alright, in this shot right here you can see we've got our riff-raff coupler put in, as well as here's our intake pipe going to our Spectre filter. Alright, so this was just a quick shot of me panning across the engine bay. You can see some of my taping on these wires right here. The air filter, and this is it for the first time running with its air filter on. I wanted to see if it changed the sound any. It actually ended up being rather astonishing how much that custom intake amplified the sound of the turbo, and that's what this video is demonstrating. Now you'll notice something interesting here. You can see that there is a piece of rope holding up the front axle, and that's because the springs are missing. The springs are missing because the front end had begun to sag, and turns out the coils needed more than just plus 500. We ended up with new coils that were plus 750 pounds to help hold all of the extra weight we put on the nose. Here's actually a good shot of David. He's got a pair of 33s, the coil with the coil compression tool, and a welding mask on, gloves. He's compressing this coil so that we can try to get it in there.
Couple, nice and easy. Up the throttle. Gently now, please.
So in this shot here is actually the first time the Bronco came out of the shop as a diesel Bronco. You can hear the transmission sounds to be slipping a lot, and that is 100% what it's doing. We forgot to recheck the fluid level once we put it in gear, and it was just low on fluid. Alright, so in this shot, me and David are riding in the diesel Bronco coming down the street for the first time. Dang thing sounding like an F-14 jet.
Come on, Papa! Straighten out!
Yes, David is sitting on a milk crate right now.
Rolling on the grass, there's like no power locked up or nothing like that, huh? I feel like I'm having to give it a lot of gas to get it to go. Oh, you think that's just a computer thing?
Probably just some slippage from the transmission. It might be a little low on fluid. The fluid is supposed to be checked with the transmission in drive, reverse, and on flat ground. Right, so if you want, I'll put it back in park, and we'll pull the dipstick and check it again.
So a few things here. You heard me tell him I'm going to go put it in park for him. And the whole reason that is because the linkage hadn't been connected to the transmission yet from the column shifter. And then you also hear me explaining to him that we need to recheck the fluid again.
You ready to do this, Papa? Let's do this.
Forward, wait.
Scoot up on your milk crate there, buddy. It ain't blown up yet.
So the astute among you might have noticed that during this field trip down the street in David's neighborhood, the Bronco never shifted, and that's because Among other things, we hadn't completed the wiring to the ABS sensor in the rear of the truck, but little did we know that setup was never going to work, and we'll get to that. So here you can see that we've put in the intercooler here. This did get more paint, I promise. So the intercooler is mounted in front of the condenser. You can see the intercooler piping making a hard turn right here. I had to cut some metal out of the front core support right here to make that pass. You can see here the polished pipes up top. Here's the spider. Here's the hot side. Oh, you can also see a lot of this wiring has been cleaned up here in this corner. Alright, so what I was pointing out here is all of these lines here. These are vacuum lines. Here's a vacuum sensor for the ECM. All of these lines have been ran. Here's the little manifold that holds all the vacuum. So now we've got power brakes. Alright, so remember we talked about the tailgate looking different? This is the I believe earlier model tailgate that was missing the clip holes that we chose to put on the Bronco instead, and didn't have dents in it. Alright, so what you see here is this is the fascia that goes below the grille and the headlights. It needed to be clearanced for the intercooler, so I've cut a notch out of it here, painted it back in, and here it is reinstalled. So this is the fascia, and you can see the cutout here to make clearance for the intercooler. Here you can see just how snug the intercooler is to the condenser, how little space there really was here for these pipes to pass. I've actually gone in and modified the engine cover to still work. I've cut it out right here. I believe some back here too, so that the engine cover could still go on. Right here is the Borgenson steering shaft that we put in as part of our work to get rid of all of the slop in the steering, and this is one of those things that resulted in many more things getting done because we still had slop. Alright, this is the crankcase breather catch can, and we actually ended up removing this because, you know, my lack of knowledge here. The 7.3 really likes to have oil actually fed back into itself. They naturally have a decent amount of crankcase pressure, not like a Cummins where if you have a lot of crankcase pressure, you know they're worn out. These motors will actually blow more crankcase pressure if they don't have oil coming into the top end. So I actually ended up modifying the intake so that this could be recirculated instead of using the catch can. Here you can see that we're looking at the wiring harness going to the rear of the truck. Here's the front end. You can actually see here on the ground the whole front end is torn down. Look at all the Moog suspension front end parts. There was all kind of slop in all of this, and this is about the time that we decided we were going with a much bigger tire, so we needed to ensure that none of this was going to fall apart and kill us. We had come this far and touched everything else, so there was no sense to leave all of this old. So all of the front suspension's getting rebuilt here. I'm working on the harness. Here's the twisted pair wire that feeds the rear ABS sensor. It actually pokes back out right here on the side. And here's our rear drive shaft at a wildly uncomfortable angle. This will be important here in the future. Alright, here's our electric fan. Here's the electric fan controller we put in, and if y'all watched our recent video here about us burning something, this is what gets burned because it failed, and we're not sure when, but we hadn't been using it for long, so it failed recently. Alright, and here's, like I told you, the other side torn down of us rebuilding the front end. Here's it all over the ground. Alright, here's it put back together again, rebuilt. We've got worn lockers, and you can see we've got some really nice coated brake disc. We got some good pads. It's all brand spanking new. Oh, as well as you can see even the steering here. This is all brand new. Here's our worn lockers.
Second gear. It hit third gear too.
It did, yeah. It's in third.
Somebody's cut that grass. And we're home.
Alright, so here you actually saw that the truck shifts. You hear me say here, proclaiming that it does shift. And it certainly did, but you also probably heard it doing was slipping a lot. And that was just the PCM having no idea what to do with the difference in our setup. Having the Ford 8.8 rear end, which has different trigger mounts on the gearing, the big tires, just all of that put together made for a really difficult time for the PCM. I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. I'll catch y'all in the next one. I really appreciate y'all being here. God bless. The social media accounts are all linked below, as well as the photo album on Facebook where all this comes from. Thank y'all. I'll catch y'all in the next one.